Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Wayne.
We welcome each of you. I know most of you. There are a few that I don't recognize your faces. I'm Pastor Wayne Nazarenus. I am a retired minister that is a member here in LaGrange, but currently serving the congregation in Columbus as their interim pastor. They have a new pastor coming on July the 20th. So perhaps in about another month, you'll get to see me a little more often, and I'll get to see you. And I'll look forward to that. Anyway, I'm glad that to be able to be here with you today, and glad that we can be able to share together the goodness of the Lord. We read just a little while ago from Matthew the 10th chapter. I want to read it from the Living Bible. This is the paraphrase, I know. Not one sparrow, what do they cost? 2 for a penny? Can fall to the ground without your Father knowing it, and the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't worry, you are more valuable to Him than many sparrows. Are you worth more than a couple sparrows? Are you worth more than a whole bunch of sparrows? According to that. Let me find my clicker. Here we go. And I want you to ask yourself, what are you worth? What are you worth? That's true for kids too. What are you worth? I got a book when I was in college, or just after I was in college, and it's written by Keith Kanoki. It's called Kanoki's Law. I don't know if any of you have heard it. It's been a long time ago since it's been printed. But he has some very interesting articles in here, and I want to share some things that he has in this book. This one is old enough that it's beginning to crack and the leaves are falling out. I'm trying to hold it together. But what are you worth? Well, there have been those who have tried to calculate the value of a person by their chemical value. Have you ever heard analysis of what you're worth by chemicals? Do you remember how much it was, Karen? It wasn't very much, was it? Somebody went through and they did an analysis of all the components, all the chemicals, all the minerals in our bodies, and what it'd be worth. And I know this is it's a few years old, and so there would be inflation. But just notice, in the average human body, there is 10 gallons of water. There's enough carbon and graphite to produce the cores of 9,000 pencils. There's enough phosphorus for 2,200 matches. There's enough iron for 1 medium-sized nail. Enough potassium to explode a small cannon. Enough lime to whitewash a chicken coop. And sulfur to rid 1 dog of fleas. And there's enough fat for 7 cakes of soap, although there may be some of us who could, you could produce a little more than that. Well, you add all this together, and according to what he says here, they came up with $34.54. That's not much, is it? Now, considering inflation, it's probably quite a bit more than that now, but it's still not much. You're not worth much, are you? Not when you think of it that way. So, when you think about what the body is worth in electronic energy, it's a little bit different. Now, there are hydrogen atoms in the body. Yeah, if you use the hydrogen atoms in the body, my screen is coming up with an extra letter in there that I didn't have in my program. I think as the software shows off something different. And we have enough hydrogen atoms. If we could tap the energy in all these hydrogen atoms, enough energy to provide a power for the entire United States for 1 week. That's one person. 11 million kilowatt hours per pound. That's really quite a lot of energy, isn't it? And at this time, he said that calculated out to be about $85 billion. Now that sounds a little more valuable, doesn't it? Wouldn't you like to cash it in? Well, if you had to cash it in, it would kind of be fatal. But somebody else would have to cash you in. $85 billion. Now, that really sounds a little better, doesn't it? A little bit more worth. But I want to suggest that there are in your body, there are 1 octillion atoms. Do you know what 1 octillion looks like? Have you ever used that number? I don't suppose you probably have. And 1 octillion is equivalent to 1 plus 27 zeros following it. Now, let me give you, there you go. That's what that number looks like. Even our government doesn't use those kind of numbers. They still drop clear down into the measly trillions, you know. Well, let me give you an illustration, and he shows in here an illustration that some scientists came up with, Dr. Donald H. Andrews. He was a professor of chemistry, and he said if you would take every one of those 1 octillion atoms and make it the size of a pea, if you would create that many peas, 1 octillion peas, and you took and you covered the state of Pennsylvania with a layer of peas 4 feet deep. I guess that's about 4 feet, isn't it? About 4 feet deep, all over the state of Pennsylvania. Then at that point, you would have only, I think it's only 1 quintillion peas. Now, that's an awful lot of peas, isn't it? But that's only 1 quintillion peas. Now, what if you took and covered the entire land mass of the world? All the, not the oceans, but just the land. If you covered all the land mass on the entire globe, 4 feet deep, you would only have 1 sextillion peas. If we could freeze over all the oceans and all the waters, all the lakes and everything, and then covered the entire globe with your 4 feet of peas, then, and then we go out among the neighboring stars and we collect 250 planets the same size as this earth, and you cover them as well. Cover them with 4 feet of peas, then you would have 1 septillion peas. And finally, we go out into the farthest reaches of the Milky Way and we collect 250,000 planets the size of our Earth, and we cover all of them with peas, 4 feet deep. Finally, we have an octillion peas. Now, that's a lot of peas, isn't it? That's an awful lot of peas. That's 1 human being, 1 person, 1 average man. And so, those of you who are scientifically inclined, if you know anything about an atom, what is an atom mostly made up of? They have some electrons and protons and things. What is the atom primarily made up of? Empty space. Empty space. Did you know if you could take all these 1 octillion atoms and you could squeeze all of the empty space out of it, and you could shrink that down, it would be very dense and it would be very heavy, but you would be smaller than that. It would be a speck. You'd have to use a magnifying glass to see it. Less than a speck of dust. Very heavy. You know, in my case, about 170, 180 pounds, speck of dust. But if you took all the empty space out, there's not much left. That's the human body. Now, it's kind of an interesting illustration, I think. But I want to ask, what are you really worth? Is it the $34.54? Is it the $85 billion? What are you really worth? Maybe we should ask, what do you mean to God? And what are you worth to God? There's a story that comes out of Venezuela where a 13-year-old boy was kidnapped. And the kidnappers demanded a ransom in order for the father to get him back. We're talking about a father. This father received a ransom message that he must pay $900,000 in order to get his son back. That's a lot of money, isn't it? $900,000 for his son. Now tell me, was the boy worth it? Was he worth $900,000? What made him worth that much? It was worth it to his father. Would you have paid $900,000 for him? Well, I don't know if there's anybody here that would be able to. I don't know, there probably are some people that could, but he probably wouldn't be worth that to you. Has anybody paid a ransom for you? Who? Jesus paid a ransom for you. God has paid a ransom for you. And evidently, God thinks that you're worth it. Does God know values? If you're not worth a ransom, then God cheated himself, didn't he? If you're not worth that ransom. I don't know if you had gone and bought something at the dollar store. You know, I don't care which dollar store, Dollar General, Dollar Tree, Family Dollar. If you had gone and bought something at one of these stores, I know sometimes they're not just $1. They may be 2 or 3 or so. But would you pay $1 million to get it back if you lost it? Why not? It's not worth it. You'd go buy another gadget, your food, or whatever it is you bought at the dollar store. You could buy one for just $1, maybe a little more. Yeah, you wouldn't pay $900,000 for it, $1 million. You wouldn't pay $100 for it because you can replace it easily. Why did God pay so much if you're not worth it? He wouldn't do that. And so what was it that made the boy so valuable? Was it the ransom the father was willing to pay? Is that what made the boy valuable? Or was he valuable before the ransom was paid? He was already valuable. Can you imagine, after he had been ransomed by his father, that he might have been out with the guys playing out in the empty lot, and he was out there playing, and one of the guys says, you know, how do you know that your dad cares about you? Maybe he doesn't care at all. Can you imagine this boy say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know why if I'm valuable to my dad or not. You think he could say something like that? Not if he understood, and at 13 years old, he should understand that what his father did was way, way excessive. I mean, not excessive, very, very expensive. It was a very expensive ransom that he had paid. And the boy had to know that he was valuable if his father would do that. Now, there's been a spiritual ransom that's been paid. God considers you valuable. Even little people like Abigail. Yeah. Even old people like Bernie. Sorry, Bernie. You might feel like you've kind of come to the end of your you're nearing the end of your usefulness in this world. Did you know that God still considers you of great value? And He paid for you. He paid a ransom for little people and big people, and He loved us so much. Now, I don't have all the answers, but I'd like to share a few things that I believe are wonderful to know about God. God has an infinite number of longings and desires and needs. Do you need anything? Well, sure, there are things that we need. Do you need water? Well, certainly. And do you need something to eat, food? Yes. Air to breathe? I mean, there are a number, we could go on and on about things that we need. Does God need anything? I mean, the scripture says He has the cattle on 1,000 hills. Does God need anything? I believe that when God created Adam and Eve with needs, He created them that way because He is that way. He has needs, and He created you with needs. Not only do you need just, the physical things of water, food, air, but you need somebody that loves you. And you need to have somebody that you can love. God's that way. He has a great longing in His heart for love. Early in my ministry, I had a family. Their name was McKinney. Welcome. This family, the McKinneys, they had what I would consider a fairly large family. They had 9 children. And then they had a baby brother came along. That made 10. Now, isn't it sad that with that many children, when this new baby was born, there was hardly any love left for him? Does it work that way? Any of you come from large families? A few of you. How many? 8 in your family. That's almost as many as the McKinney family. Anybody come from a larger family than 8? Mary. 9? And who? Is there another hand? Well, Marlene came from the same size family, didn't she? Yeah, those are big families. My father-in-law, he came from a family of 13. That's a big family. Well, McKinney's, they had another baby, and you know what? There was love for this 10th child. And while we were there, one of the older children, died. And how do you think that Mrs. McKinney would have felt if I had gone up? I was her pastor, and I had gone up, Mrs. McKinney, you really shouldn't feel too bad about it because you've still got 9. You think that would have been pretty comforting to her? Why? Because that one was important to her. Every one of them. She loved them all. And so, it was a hard way. God has a large family, doesn't He? He has a large family. But God made us so that we would have love that would stretch out. God's love is like that. It includes it. It goes all the way around. Now, as we grow up, when we're little, we mostly think about what mom and dad mean to us, don't we? Mom and dad, we don't even think about it sometimes. We don't think about where's the food come from. Samantha, do your little ones try to figure out how much, they don't think about what it costs. I've talked to people that grew up in very, very poor homes, and they says, I didn't even know we were poor. We had food to eat, and so we think about, as little people, we think about what mom and dad mean to us. When I need some new clothes, they can just produce it. And I remember when our boys were little and we would tell them that we didn't have money for something, they'd say, just write a check. Now it would be just use your credit card. But they had no concept of what it costs. And then, of course, when they started getting old enough where they began having to buy things, we heard them say things, I didn't know it costs that much to get groceries, I didn't know that rent was going to be this much. They want to get big enough and old enough to go out on their own, but all of a sudden now there are expenses associated with that, There's rent or a mortgage, there's clothes to buy, there's food to eat, there's, all those things that adults know about. Kids they aren't concerned about that. They shouldn't be. Mom and dad take care of those things. It's not until we get older that we begin to realize. And it's not until then that we begin to realize what we mean to our parents. It isn't just that we are important to our children to take care of them, but as we get older, and then we have children of our own, we begin to realize how important the children are to the parents. Now, of course, you understand that when your parents probably told you, it costs a lot to raise a kid. If you didn't know, by the time you've raised your child from birth to time to be out of the house, you have probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Did you know that? If you've gone and supported them through Adventist education, elementary school, academy, college. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, Georgia Cumberland Academy is $20,000 a year. Now, that's a little more than what I had to pay for an academy education. That's a lot of money when you raise your kid. But I'm sure that every one of you parents, as you were raising your children, you said, the thing that really, that helps me get through this, all these expenses, is that I know when these children grow up, they're going to take care of me. They're going to be able to send the money back. You don't think so? I see Karen shaking her head. It just generally doesn't happen. Now, occasionally, I've known a few folks that is, as they've gotten to where they couldn't care for themselves and they didn't have enough resources, that they had children that were well supplied, And they began, paying their expense, the parents' expenses, and doing those things, even putting, paying for nursing care facilities. Somebody told me the other day that their child told them that you better treat me well because, one day I'm going to be making a decision as to which nursing home you're going to be in. Isn't that encouraging? Let that soak in just a little bit. So when we as parents, we raise children, we don't think about the fact that someday now they're going to be taking care of us. In fact, most people that I know, I visited with Bernie and Vine a number of times. They're probably, maybe the oldest couple in our congregation. They have a fiercely independent nature. Did you ever figure that out? They like to do things for themselves as much as possible. We want to take care of, we would rather be the one taking care of even our adult children than to have them be taking care of us. God made us that way. And I'm glad for that. Remember Enoch in the Bible? Genesis, the 5th chapter, the Bible says that he walked with God, especially after his firstborn son, Methuselah, was born. Now, Enoch was 300 years old before he had his first child. And it says that Enoch walked with God, especially after he had his son. He understood better what a son means to a father. And I like to think that God said one day, he said finally, this is so good, Enoch. It's so good walking with you. It's so good interacting with you. It's so good having you as my friend. We can talk about anything. We can go anywhere together. It is so good that I want you to be with me. And the Bible says he took him. And they are walking together still, all through eternity. Been going on ever since. Enoch made God happy. He pleased God. Hebrews 11 verse 5 tells us Enoch pleased God. It wasn't just that Enoch needed God. God needed Enoch. I like this statement. It's an old one, 1903, Signs of the Times. We were brought into existence because we were needed. Brought into existence because we were needed. Needed by whom? Needed where? Well, we're needed by God. Why am I here? Because I'm needed. Now, I appreciate the fact that, there are some people that need me, I believe. I believe my wife needs me. I'm glad for that. I need her too. And, and I believe that there's some others that feel that they need me. I'm grateful for that. But I'm here in this universe because I am needed by God. God has been waiting a long time for me to come along. And he planned me before this world was made. He had me in mind when he made the planet. Did you remember the verse in Ephesians 1 verse 4? It says, he hath chosen us in him when? Before the foundation of the world. He planned for you, Yushay. Before the foundation of the world. He planned for you, Estelle, before he created this world. He needed you. Sadie, God planned for you. Long, long ago, thousands of years ago, before he ever created this earth, he knew that he needed a Sadie just like you. Here's the point. Do you know I'm the only one that's like this pattern? I know some people said, oh, you remind me of, some people say I remind them of Abraham Lincoln. I'm not sure that they knew him. But, we might resemble somebody else, but nobody's like us. Nobody. And if God should lose me, what would he do? Well, what he's done. He left heaven. He's gone on a trip to find me. He ransomed me. He brings me back. That's how valuable he thinks I am. God can't bear the thought of my being lost. Jesus came on a trip from heaven because he wanted me. He needed me. There was a longing in his heart that no angel could satisfy. No other creature could fill that need. He wanted me. I don't think I'm quite ready for that one. He wanted me. Now, what if the father in Venezuela paid $900,000 ransom for his son? What if somebody came up to him and said, I understand, your son's, there's a huge ransom demanded for him. And that's an awful lot. You shouldn't use your resources that way. I'll tell you what, I know 2 boys. And I can sell those 2 boys to you for $100. Now, that's twice as many boys. Don't you think that would be a good deal? Do you think the father says, hey, that would be a bargain? Did he? Why? He wasn't just looking for any boy, was he? He didn't need even 100 boys at $100 each. He wanted one boy. That was his missing son. He wanted his own. So I'm thankful this morning that God didn't want just one man. He needed this man. He came for me. He died for me. He is in heaven now with one thought, and that's to prepare a place for me and to prepare me for that place. He wants me to be with him all through eternity. Now, I know there are going to be a lot of other folks. I wouldn't want to be the only child in his kingdom. I'm so glad there are going to be lots of brothers and sisters in his kingdom. But friends, there is no doubt in my mind that I occupy a very special place in God's mind and his heart. Now, don't you wish that God cared that way about you? Well, I hope you caught the point. He does. He does. He feels that way even about the most ornery of us. I won't ask who's the most ornery here. But God feels that way for you. Steps to Christ, page 100, it says, the relations between God and each soul are as distinct and full as though there was not another soul upon the earth. I'm told that if there were no other people that needed saving, he would have come to save you. You were that important. I'm so glad for that. Jesus wants you to know this today how much you're worth to him. Not just for what you can do for you, or what you can do for him, like missionary work or other things, but what you can do in just letting God know that you love him. After all, what is it that a parent really wants from a child? What? They want love. They long for love from their child. They want love. Love is the mystery that explains all other mysteries. The parent longs for the love of the child. And so my business in life is to fill the place in his heart that I was made to fill, to satisfy the heart longing that I was created to satisfy, to make the one glad who so loved me that he gave himself for me, according to Galatians 2, verse 20. But it's not just for me, but in order to get me. That's what he did. Wouldn't it be a shame not to give him the one thing that he wants? The one thing that I have to give him, that I've got? Wouldn't it be a shame not to give him what fulfills that need in his heart? That's what he wants. I don't want to reject that kind of love. I just can't do that. Not only is Jesus my friend, I am his friend. Well, I want us to close by singing, I Have a Friend. I found a friend. And we're going to only sing the first two stanzas of this. And so, Magdalena, we're going to sing those right now. If that'll work. Notice the words again. Be reminded of these words. I found a friend, oh, such a friend. He loved me ere I knew him. He drew me with the cords of love, and thus he bound me to him. You can come on up. We're going to do it right now. You what?
I don't want to push you out of the way.
No, I'm right here. I'll move that a little bit if you need it.
Thank you.
Let's stand together. I wonder if there's somebody here who